Hello and welcome to SUFCtv on this fine sunny Sunday evening. As you can of course see on the screen to my right, I'm joined by the one and only Paul Doswell. Paul, firstly, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. Beautiful afternoon today, and as you can see, I'm keeping improving the tan as much as I can.
Excellent stuff. So firstly, Paul, before I get into your time with Sutton United, we're going to be covering all the great memories you've had with the club. I want to firstly talk about how you got into football, your early memories as a kid. As I understand, you're a Southampton fan, so I'm pretty sure that's probably the top Southampton players you had back in the day that got you into football.
Yeah, well, obviously, brought up really by my dad, who, as you know, came to almost every Sutton game when I got there. From the age of about 5, was taking me to the Dell in the old days, up in the chocolate box in the Milton Road end. And that was my introduction to football. And from 4 years on, I became an avid Southampton fan, and obviously very much still am today. From the playing side, obviously got playing from sort of under 8s, under 9s onwards. Yeah, it was I absolutely loved football and still do to this day, obviously.
Were there any moments that stand out for you when you were playing football?
Oh, I've got so many good memories. I suppose playing for Southampton schoolboys, playing for Hampshire schoolboys, playing for England colleges under 18s. So representing your country at college level was a real achievement. And then playing for Hampshire over 50 times at a senior level and getting capped by the county, that still takes pride and precedent in my football study. So loads of good memories. I was a decent enough player. I think I've turned out a slightly better manager, if I'm being honest. But I loved playing. Management was always the second best. But it was just the bit about being around the dressing room and being part of the players, and it's a drug that I've never been able to really do without.
So I want to get on now to your time management, and it started off at EC. So can you talk us through your memories there?
Well, I actually started out originally because I've represented Hampshire as a player so many times. When my playing career finished, I was 32 with a knee cruciate. And I was asked by the Hampshire County whether I'd take over the under-21 team. And I did that for a year, and we won that league that year, the Hampshire under-21s. And they asked me to take over the representative side, the senior side, the following year, which I did. And again, we won that league that year, the South Western League. And it was really through doing those 2 years that I came to the attention of the Eastleigh chairman at the time, Roger Sherwood. And Roger asked me, if I would be manager of Eastleigh for the following season. And really, that's when my journey in football management started. And had an unbelievable 10 years at Eastleigh, driving through the leagues, and obviously from there I ended up at Sutton for 11 years. So 21 years of my football management was spent with two clubs.
So how did Sutton United come to your attention?
Well, I put a lot of time, energy into Eastleigh. As I said, 10 years is a very, very long time to do at one club. And it's probably the 10th year at Eastleigh that I felt. It's probably probably for the first time really jaded, really tired. Not only did I manage the football team at Eastleigh, but I was a massive part of turning the club into a limited company, building new stands, building a 3G pitch, putting in tarmac for 200 cars. So I wasn't just the football manager there. I was pushing the club forward at every opportunity. And I just really almost run out of petrol. And I just really I decided to leave and give myself a year's break from football. And I was on holiday. I decided to take a break to Spain with Kate. And I got a phone call from Steve West in Spain. And in those days, you were on a massively big mobile. It wasn't the little ones you had today. And I took the phone call, and it was Wesley saying to me that he'd heard on the grapevine that Jimmy Dack wasn't going to take the Sutton United job. And would I be interested? And if I was, he would ring, I think, Dave Fairbrother or Bruce at the time to see if they would be interested in giving us an interview. and subsequent to that, I think Bruce.
I got Bruce's number. I rang
I got
Bruce from
Bruce's
Spain and said
number. I had to come and talk to him. And
as Bruce has often said in many interviews, I think,
he didn't interview me. I interviewed him, but that was the start of a most wonderful,
fantastic
11 years.
The best
chairman
you could ever work with, the best
board of directors.
I
must mention Barry Applin as a start of that. Bless him, he only was there for 2 years with me before he passed away. And Brian Williams, who's still there today, who's become a wonderful friend of mine and Kate's, and Merrill. Mike Bidmead, again, another director who sadly passed away during my time at the club. So incredible sort of memories from day one, really. And as I said, everyone at the football club from off the pitch deserves huge credit for keeping the club where it is and where it's going to.
So when you came into Sutton, what were the first things that you wanted to change?
Well, at that point, we were still darning the socks.
Imagine
that, a football club in the Conference South or the Isthmian Premier still darning socks. It reminded me of an old person's house that had a lot of love in it over the years. A lot of love, but unfortunately no one had remembered to renew the kitchens and the bathrooms, and the wallpaper was still very much back in the 50s and 60s. And as I said, there was a lot of love within the club, but the actual facade of it. I remember going to Eastleigh the year before and just remember looking at the ground thinking, "Oh, this is a club that looks in disrepair," and the pitch was in a terrible state. I remember that. Only probably 500 people dotted around a huge stadium, because at that point they still had the athletics or running track around it. So it was a club in decline, but it was a club that still had the same fantastic people and the same brilliant, probably the same 500 supporters that were supporting them through thick and thin. The one thing that was apparent was that the supporters were sick and tired of what had happened the previous season. But even then they still came and watched their team. That showed that there was a base there to work with, loyal supporters. They weren't Premiership supporters that were going to go and choose another club who were doing well. They were genuine Sutton United supporters, and that was something I hadn't seen before. That just win, lose or draw, those supporters were going to support that football club. They weren't chasing the glory, because the glory days had been at Sutton. The FA Amateur Cup, the legendary game against Coventry City. I think the club, in many ways,
very much in the past on its former glories. And one of my
jobs, if I could do it, was to see if I could restore us to certainly be competitive. I think that was the first port of call. There was a lot of fear in the club that we could actually get relegated in the first season back to below the Ryman Premier or Isthmian Premier. So huge amount of work to do, but we did go up there knowing that there was a lot of things that needed to change.
So just looking at your early days at Sutton in that first month of that season, we seemed to have a good start home. We got wins over Hendon and Hastings, and McCallum was certainly a big player in that first month.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to really go back to when we got appointed, which I don't think we actually got appointed till probably from memory at sort of the end of May, and so we literally had a very, very short space of time to put a team together.
And that included putting a management team together.
Obviously, Steve West had made the initial phone call to me because he wanted to work with me in a management team. And then I was recommended by Bruce, and it's probably one of the questions is, who's your best signing? Well, one of the best signings I ever made was through Bruce, and that was Clive Baxter, the kit man. Because Bruce said to me, there's a guy there who'd love to help do the kit and be part of the dressing room. And I said, I don't know him, and I like people that I can trust around me. And Bruce said to me, Clive Baxter is the person. Years later, Clive Baxter was still with me, and he is a phenomenal person at that football club, and I absolutely love Clive to bits. I was then introduced to Steve McKim again. I felt it was very important to get someone local to the club. And Steve McKim and I are probably best friends to this day. I couldn't have got a more loyal and better assistant, primarily at the start, a player, but he was my assistant manager and coach. And in those early days, Steve McKim and West and myself formed a real good initial bond. And as I said, it's never easy. The other great appointment I made, and he's still with us today, gets very few mentions for me, but Bobby Childs, who again is Kate and I and Bobby and Stacey were still best friends. We still see each other a lot. And Bobby Childs was with me from day one as well, and is still at the club to this day. So you look back at it, and you look at the people that we got involved initially, and there were some good people there. And it was a massive surprise to me that being able to put a team together that quickly, that we had probably as good a start as we did. But yeah, Gavin McCallum scored 10 goals in that first 2 months of the season, and it was a massive boost for us to get off to a decent start. But you've got to remember in those days our budget was not great, and that's one of the reasons that Jack Dack decided not to take the job. And we were almost put in a collection of players that couldn't get other clubs at the time, because when I started looking in June, a lot of the best players had already gone to other clubs. So we were a real assortment of people that couldn't get clubs, and weren't perhaps in people's first teams at the time. But I think between us, we had an amazing first season. When you look back at it, to finish fifth in a season where that team was pretty much scrabbled together was actually a real good effort.
I'm just going to go and get some headphones, Dodds. There seems to be a bit of problem with the audio, so I'm just going to fix that. Just going to get some headphones. Back in 1 sec. Apologies.
No problem. No problem.
That should be better now. Apologies about that, guys. So yeah. So just looking at that season where you finished fifth, was that sort of one of those seasons where it was a bit nip and tuck to get in the playoffs?
Yeah, we never felt that we would definitely get in those playoffs. Again, this is going back a long time ago in my memory bank, but I think it was that year that we pushed on into the playoffs in the last sort of 2 or 3 games, if I remember rightly. But you look back at the team that year, as I said, as individuals, one of the real massive helps was Hughes along with me from Eastleigh. And Hughesy was a Premiership footballer who's a Welsh international, and he was right at the end of his career. Unbelievable job with me at Eastleigh to get us to where we got to. And I brought Dave up for one more season. He'd actually retired, bless him, but I made him come out of retirement for one more year. And I think all the Sutton fans that remember Dave remember like the full-blooded performances he gave for us. But we had a good team. You had Chrissy Collins and Karim El Salahi as the 2 centre halves. The 3 players that I kept, by the way, from the side from the previous year was Aidan Bray, AJ, he loved, obviously Craig Dundas and Kez. So we only kept 3 of the team from the previous year. I felt that there was a massive mindset at the club that needed to change, and a lot of the players there had just got used to losing week in, week out. So it was a massive change. But we brought the 2 wingers in, because I always like playing with wingers, and I brought Matty Han in, who was a great little winger for us. And people might not remember this one, but the left-sided winger that season was Adam Wilde. I brought Adam up from the Southampton way with me. And, you look back at it, we had the old-timers like Dean Palmer, the big lad in midfield, who was a real aggressive midfield player. And what we were really is we were a men's team. I put that first year, we weren't going to be any pushovers for any. And Steve McKim, myself and Westy put out a real man's team to compete in that league. And reasons that we finished as high as we did. Paul Nicholls in goal, who went on to become John Terry's agent. Nico was not a very tall goalkeeper and used to occasionally get the crosses go over him into the far corner. But brilliant anticipator as a goalkeeper. And that first year, as I said, you've got to look at it and say, to finish fifth in the league in our first season. We also got through to the first round of the FA Cup that year. Losing to Notts County at home, and you got to remember the club was in disarray. That day we had over 2,500 people watching the Notts County game. I don't know if that's the time that Leroy missed the pen. No, it wasn't. It wasn't that early. But we performed well on the day, but we didn't really trouble them enough to warrant what we'd hoped to get, which is probably a draw and get back to Notts County in their lovely stadium. But that year, you've got to look at it and say, first round of the FA Cup to finish fifth in the league. And this all brings me back to my first real memory of realising the support base that Sutton had, because I think it was only about 3 or 4 weeks into my management career at Sutton. And there was high hopes amongst the supporters that we might be able to do something a bit different. They didn't really know me. They knew that I'd done well at Eastleigh, but they had no real understanding of what I was about as a person and perhaps even as a manager and how I wanted to play. But I remember going to Tooting and Mitcham on a bank holiday, early days. And I remember walking out on the pitch before kickoff and seeing a whole bank, the whole away terrace was filled up with supporters, probably over 300 to 400 Sutton fans. And I really wanted to do well for them. And I remember, I think after about 55 minutes, we were 4-0 down. And my dad was actually stood in the terrace in that day. And I remember him saying to me in the car on the way home, he said, "Son," he said, "you've got a tough job," he said, "because this lot think you're rubbish." And I don't blame him, because that day we were rubbish. It was only 2 goals at the death from Gavin McCallum that actually gave the score some respectability. But I remember on the day thinking this could have been 5 or 6-0 at the time. And I remember that's when I felt a real affiliation with the supporters. I didn't want to let the supporters down ever. And I vowed after that day that we'd never try and let them down as badly as that again.
So going on to next season now, 2009-10, obviously we had the disappointment of the Staines playoff defeat, but as you said, we got to the first round of the FA Cup, finished first place. There was a real base to build off for that next season.
Yeah, and I think, we got to remember, just finish off that last season, we were well by Staines. Staines and Dover, I think, were the 2 teams that went up that year. And they were miles in front of us all the way throughout the league season. Staines had a very, very good team at that time. And they beat us very comfortably at their ground. You got a home advantage in those days. And as I said, we were chasing shadows on that particular day. But to then go on to the next season, the signings that we made, just looking down here, we signed Kevin Scriven, goalkeepers that I signed in my time with the keepers, although I thought we signed some good ones. We signed Sam Gargan and Sonny Cobb from the Brighton area, and Gargan and Cobby was a very aggressive midfield player. Gargan was a good goal scorer, a good centre forward. We also brought in Jason Goodliff that year, who played at Wimbledon, so we brought in a real presence at the back, at centre half. And also we had the emergence of a young lad called Stephen Payne, who was only 17. And Stephen had the most unbelievable 4 or 5 months with us. And we sold him to Fulham within a very short space of time for some decent money actually at the time as well. Bradley Wood-Garnish, that great character. Bradley we brought in, and Danny Phillips as well. It was little mercurial number 10, great little player. So when you look at it, the wingers that we always liked, Anthony Joseph came in that year. It was an electrically quick winger. Great. Just couldn't get near him. But guarantee whether you'd get across at the end of it. But ultimately, we brought in some good players, and then the young ones started to come through. Bentley Graham came through that year at 18. Billy Dunn, who had a massive amount of hope for at the time, and Stephen Payne. So we had 3 18-year-olds in the squad in the first phase of that season. We made some key signings during that season. No later, I think Alan Poughton came along that year. And one of my fondest memories again of that season would be the FA Cup first round at Hampton, our 4th round qualifying. And again, I remember walking out at Hampton onto the pitch before the game, and we were up against an excellent manager in Alan Devonshire. And they had a very good team at the time. Craig Dundas had gone to Hampton. They were in a higher league than us. Jamie Collins, believe it or not, played against us. against us, and we were. Remember walking out and the roar that the team got from the Sutton supporters. Again, we outnumbered the Hampton fans that day, and that again it made me quite spine tingly. And the players responded to that day. I think it was we beat Hampton 3-1, and it was later on match of the day that evening, and that was again a fantastic memory for me from that season. Then we subsequently went to Hereford and lost in the next round. But again, I remember clapping the fans at the end of the game and looking up at that main stand, seeing hundreds of Sutton fans, and just sort of a real sense of pride of what we were beginning to get to as a club. And the affiliation was just between all of us was getting stronger and stronger.
And we're in good form going into the playoffs that season, weren't we? We'd beaten Billericay, I think, in the final home game season. We beat Canvey Island, Billericay twice, I think, in that same month. So we had good form going into that Kingstonian playoff game.
Well, this was if you take me back to that game, that was probably up there in my top 5 disappointments. It took me a long time in the summer to get over that. We were my time at Sutton, the second best team in that. We were Kingstonian when it got to that point. I was very, very confident with the team we had that we would win that day. I couldn't see us losing, to be honest. And we went 1-0 up early as well. And Bobby Traynor has hit 2 like Marco Van Basten volleys, 2 of the best goals you're going to see in one game. And to lose that game as we did, I think 3-2, was an absolute sickener. And I've got to be honest as well, from my own perspective, I dropped down to come into the Isthmian or Ryman Premier, and I knew it would take me certainly the first year to organise the club, but I genuinely thought those players we'd signed year 2 that we would get automatically promoted and all win those playoffs, and not to do it for me was a massive disappointment.
And you had to get yourself off the canvas again and go for a third season. What was that motivation for you staying on for that third season? Because to miss out promotion twice, was there doubts in your mind thinking this just might not happen?
Yeah, listen, when I first came to Sutton, I had no understanding that I'd be there for 11 years. Most football managers last 2, maybe 3 tops at most clubs. I think the Eastleigh situation was unique because I'd got a lot of people involved behind the scenes to push the club forward. One of the reasons I came to Sutton was really just to be a football manager in the first instance. It wasn't thinking that I'd get involved and push the ideas that eventually came. But I've got to be honest, that summer it took me 3 or 4 weeks to recover from that. And at that point as well, we were training in the evenings. So I was leaving Southampton at like 3 o'clock. It was taking me 2.5 hours to get to training. The training venues in those years weren't very good. We were training with almost zero light, very sort of poor temporary floodlights that we used to borrow from A Plant. I remember that. Training at a school where the pitches were uneven and the grass was not cut. But I did that for 2 years. I remember just driving back thinking, do I want to manage again in the Ryman Premier for another season? And do I want to keep travelling up of an evening when the training facilities weren't very good? And I did ponder that for 3 or 4 weeks, to be honest. And by the end of the 4th week, you've got to pick yourself up off the canvas. I hadn't achieved what I wanted to achieve at Sutton at that point, which was to get them back to. My goal was always to try and get them back into the Conference South and just be a competitive Conference South club. I'll never forget the amount of supporters that spoke to me about how sort of they felt humiliated that year. They went down as the bottom team, and that most of the Conference South fans were sort of almost taking the mickey out of them. So that was my plan, and I just felt I hadn't achieved and done what I'd set out to do. So that's why the next season we came back, ready to rock and roll. And that was the year that we signed some great players. And you look back now, Simon Downer, who's up there as one of our best ever signings for me. Simon, Carl Murray, who played league football, central midfielder, was still only 26. Signed Sam Page, a centre half that I'd always liked over that last 2 years, watching him play in the Ryman Premier against us. You know, I think he played for Horsham, so we signed Sam Page, and you know, my massive mate Shorey. You know, he came. That's the first year that he came with me and added that bit of fun. You know, Wayne was brilliant in the dressing room. But then we also signed Tom Davis. Tom had been in Conference South winning teams before. Fowler, Olanishi, the winger, again, fantastic left-sided winger. And just, you know, Kenny Adagi. But the big signing for us that year was Richard Jolly. And the hope was from all of us that Richard would go and score the 25 goals in that season. He'd done, you know, a lot for other teams. You know, so we had a very good side to start that season. Almost say that determination to win it was there from the start. But the biggest thing for me was we went and signed Leroy Griffiths and Andy Forbes in January, because we just felt, me and Steve, we felt we needed a push to get us over the line. And the big push was bringing those two in, and we really romped away with the league, if I'm being honest. That was also the year that Mickey Stevens came on board as assistant manager as well, another massive legend at the club. So, you know, you had Clive Baxter with me, you had Steve McKinn, you had Mickey Stevens, and people that really cared about the football club. And, you know, if you look at Mickey's introduction in that year, 2010, 2011, he's been with me ever since. And again, a lovely man. We have great company with him and me and Birdie. Stays in the background, doesn't look to be in front of the camera, but his knowledge of the game was outstanding, and his knowledge of the club was outstanding. And, you know, he was a very, very big part, underrated, but a big part of the management team. And I think we won that league that year by 11 points, which is, you know, an incredible thing to do. But I just think all of us were determined not to be involved in a playoff that year. We had a plus 45 goal difference, which was incredible. And I also remember Tony Dolbear and a few other directors going up to Cray Wanderers and watching the game that meant that team was second, couldn't get. We all celebrated that day, but we won it a good 2 weeks before the end of the season. If I remember rightly, we smashed Carshalton again every time. So the two big things that needed to be done when I got to the club, we had to beat Carshalton, which is a name I'm allowed to say now, but I've never been allowed to say whilst I've been at the club. And the supporters made it clear to me that I could pretty much do anything as long as I beat Carshalton home and away. And in those years that we did, you know, Carshalton was still in the same league as us, which I've got to be honest wasn't for very long, because we went up and they went obviously down very quickly. So I always remember the Carshalton derbies. I absolutely love them. You know, at their place, big crowds; at our place, big crowds. And I think managers and players want to play in front of big crowds all the time.
And speaking
so
of,
it's lovely.
I was just going to actually say, just on the subject of Carl Shulton, we lifted the league trophy that season against them on the Easter Monday, if I recollect, 2-0 win. What are your memories of that day?
I remember the pitch invasion at the end. I remember, you know, literally hundreds and hundreds. I'm looking at the crowd now for that game, and I think it was over 1,500 people. So, you know, when you look back at these days, and it's lovely. I've got to give a massive shout out here, actually. When Clive King and yourself asked me if I would, you know, do this interview, I really wanted to try and get it right as best as I could for everybody. And, you know, from the lane, you know, the website that the Sutton, I don't know who's done it. I'd imagine Frakey might be involved, but there's a quite brilliant website, and it gives you every league season for us all and right the way back. And one of the lovely reference points is being able to do this with you today and click onto the league and actually just remember, you know, who the players were. And, you know, let's just go Monday in presumably the March or the April. Beat Carshalton at Sutton on the 25th of April. 1,400 people there. Olinoshi, Fowler scored, and Bradley Wood garnished. 2-0 winners. Now, you can't win the league any better than that, can you, beating Carshalton at home? And that was probably, when you look back, that sort of things like that was what set up some incredible days in our history, I think. But that would be one of them. How did we get on against them in the... we beat them again, 2-0 in December on Boxing Day. Andy Forbes and Bradley Wood-Garnis in front of 1100. So to win the league and beat Carl Shorten twice, was absolutely fantastic. But we have to mention this because it's fair to mention it. I'm going to have to mention. So I've given you one, which was losing to a Bobby Traynor double and having to watch those Kingstonian fans celebrate that night. Broke me heart. The other one, which almost finished me off that year, was losing to Alton Town at home in the first round of the FA Cup qualifying round. It was one of the biggest upsets at the time for Alton Town who beat us. That was a very, very dark day in the Doswell household, to be sure.
Well, promotions achieved at this time as we're talking about your time, promotion is now achieved, and we're now going into the next season, first time in which would have been in the Blue Square South back then. So, how did you approach the new season as for Sutton changing leagues?
I thought we had to strengthen. If you look at the team, we started to get, and this is what normally happens with me, I'll keep 6 or 7 players that I really trust and really want around me. And whilst people always talked about the revolving door, what they probably didn't realise is that the spine of the team didn't always change too much. It was a lot of players that would stay with me that I trusted. And again, this was the year that Paul Telfer came in alongside Steve McKim and myself, and so we had a brilliant off the pitch team. Mickey Stevens, Paul Telfer, Steve McKim, myself, Bobby Childs. I think that was the year that Cat Chambers came in as well. Cat's now been at the club ever since. So again, there was some real consistency off the pitch as well. The board were consistent. The chairman was consistently brilliant with me. We got on so well all the time. Always pushing him. He was always pushing me, not to make signings. I was always pushing him to make signings. But we always did it well. We never put the club in any financial jeopardy. Crowds were improving. The support was back. The enthusiasm was getting back. And that first year in the Conference South, we'll call it the Blue Square South, was one of my best seasons, funny enough. We signed Riviera that year, Anthony Riviera, who was one of the best midfielders that I've seen at Eastleigh, and he decided to come that year. And we also signed Craig Watkins back, the centre forward. So Craig was a second striker, great pace, good goal scorer. And we signed Tony Taggart. But what was worrying, probably funny enough, was that where we were doing so well, we were also in a position that we were probably taking the club again forward quite quickly, because I do remember going to Welling for the second leg of that playoff that year, and Brian Williams looking at me, Brian's, whatever you do, don't win today. And what he meant by that was to take this club straight into the National League with the cost of it, the travelling of it, the wages of it. I'm not even convinced from myself that it would have been that didn't stop us trying to win the game, of course. But I even realised then that the club, couldn't be pushed too quickly, because it can. If you go too quickly, it can actually destroy you when you get into the higher leagues. But I also remember that year, I think we had a really good run in the FA Cup. I think we got the second round of the FA Cup that year. Yeah, that was, again, the prize money alone of winning the FA Cup. I think we started off, we beat Dulwich Hamlet in the FA Cup. We beat them 5-1, and Leroy Griffith scored 4 goals that day. Straight after that, 2 weeks later, we had Bognor Regis, and we beat them 4-0 as well at home. And then we had Kettering, who at the time were a league or 2 leagues above us, and we beat them 1-0 at home. Craig Watkins scored. So for us to get to the second round of the FA Cup, bearing in mind we weren't getting through any qualifying rounds before I got there, and that was Notts County had nearly 4,000 people at the ground, and we were live on I think BBC or ITV, can't remember, but we were live that day. So we got a lot of money from the TV receipts. We got a brilliant crowd there. And I don't know if you remember this, Tom, but Leroy Griffiths missed a penalty to put us 1-0 up. And I honestly think if Leroy had scored that day, we would have gone on and won. So, again, what a season to finish fourth in your first year back in the Blue Square South, to get through to the second round of the. And again, the consistency of the team that year. We only added, as I said, Tony Taggart, Craig Watkins and Riviera to the side that had won that league for us. So again, the spine of the team was really, really remaining in place. But also that year, I don't know if you remember, but Harry Buteman. I think we bought Harry Buteman in on loan in the December. Carl Vassell, again a young striker who went on and has now played league football, I think, for Blackpool. And you've got to look back. Simon Downer, Riviera, Buteman, good players, good players.
And the playoff game that year was against Welling. Obviously, as you mentioned, we had a very successful finish. How are you feeling going into the two legs against Welling?
At the time, Jamie Day was their manager, and I remember playing them obviously twice in the normal league season. We were very close as teams, but I do remember just thinking they just have had an edge on us at the time, and I think from memory they won one on the home leg, and then I think we played the second leg and absolutely played well enough the park. They didn't get near us the whole game, but we just couldn't get that first goal to equalise the tie. If we had scored that first goal, I think we'd have gone on to win comfortably, because Welling, it's a strange thing when you play two legs. Where they were 1-0 up, they didn't know whether to sort of sit in or whether to go for bust, and in the end they sat in, and it played it very much into our hands. But God, the amount of chances we had that day, and that was a disappointment going home, but not doesn't rank in the top five. That's still got to start off, as I said to you, with Kingstonian and Alton Town as disappointments. That wasn't a disappointment. That was me looking back thinking, probably the right thing for us as a football club not to hit the National League at that point. Great season, winning season, and finishing second round into the FA Cup was a brilliant season.
And coming into the 2012-13 season, we were on a real upward spiral now coming into it. We started that season off slowly. Of your memories of that start, what do you think the reasons were for us having a slow start that season?
What season was that, Tom?
2012-13.
Yeah, again, you look at the signings we made. Harry Buteman became a permanent signing. I signed Jamie Stewart, who was a brilliant centre-half. Everyone knew him. Really good player. Leader, captain for me. Sam Rents, who had that one. And I'm pretty sure that's the year that we got hold of Marvin Williams at the end of that year, from memory. I think Marvin came on board. So if you look at the start of the season, just going back with you now, we had an opening start. We lost against Basingstoke and then drew, I think, 3 games. We then lost to Boreham Wood. I don't know where we'd have been in the league at that point. Yeah, we lost against Bromley. So when you look at it, we didn't get going until probably the December. And looking at December, we beat Staines 4-1, Maidenhead 1-0, Dorchester 1-0, Whitelift 5-2, that was a senior cup, Oxford City, then we beat Bromley. So we went on this incredible run that actually culminated in one of the worst seasons of weather for years. And that was a problem for this football club. I remember not having a home for 4 or 5 weeks. And that led us to, that year we had a very good run in the FA Trophy. And I'll never forget Clive Baxter and me getting all the towels out that we had in the club and actually trying to get the pitch to be played again, played for that long. And I just thought if we didn't play soon, we were going to not be able to pay the wages, which never happened at the club. And there was Clive and I remember never forget putting down these towels on the pitch, trying to soak up all the water.
I'm just going into the.
And we lost 5-0 that day as well to Wrexham. But it was again a great achievement to finish 5th in that league, knowing what other budgets we were up against. I think we've got to be very, very proud of where we were that season.
And as you said, you just said there, you were very proud of where you finished that season. We were really on the coattails of the playoffs at the back end. Marvin Williams was on great form. Craig Dundas was on good form.
Yeah.
Harry Buteman. We were so close, weren't we, for getting in that last playoff spot?
Yeah, we finished fifth that year. Yeah.
I think it was fifth. I'll just check actually. 2012-13 league table.
And that's before the playoff. I mean,
It was sixth. It was sixth.
So did we not? So if we finished fifth, why did we not make the playoffs that year?
It was that 2012-13 season was a sixth place finish. So we were 2 points behind Chelmsford in the end. They just nicked the last playoff spot. Right.
Yeah. So again, if you look at that, I think we beat Bath away from home the last day of the season. We were waiting to see other teams. I remember it's probably one of our best games of the season. Salisbury were an excellent team. We beat them at home 1-0. Marvin scored again. Like you said, Marvin had a brilliant April. Just looking at it there, he's got 1, 3, 5, 6, 7. He scored 9 goals in the month of April. And that took us from probably being nowhere to almost creeping into the playoff spot that year. So yeah, that was another really good building year, to get ready for the 13-14 season.
And
we signed Jamie Slabber that year as well, but he was injured a lot. So that was a disappointment because I thought Jamie would have come in and really made. We signed Jamie the next season. Yeah, he was our big signing that year.
And we had a really good preparation for that season. We had some the Arsenal kids and the Fulham kids and the Chelsea kids all came pre-season. I seem to remember that one being advertised. The club heavily advertised that, so that must have been great preparation for that season.
What 13, 14 are we at now? Yeah, let's have a look. Arsenal, 2,000 people turned up for the Arsenal game, and we lost 4-3. And then we had 2,600 there for a Chelsea 11. That doesn't happen anymore because people got to know that in the end these Premiership clubs would only bring academy teams, and they're the support of those big clubs. But to get nearly 5,000 people through the gate in that first July, again, I don't think people realise how important friendlies were to the income stream to get you going. But yeah, it was we got beat 4-0 by Chelsea. But that year is when we signed Jamie Slabber. We signed Damien Scannell, and our big signing was Jamie Taylor, who was rifling goals at the time for Luton. He wanted to get back to playing part-time and be more local. And we also signed a great player, Dale Benz, a left winger. And then, obviously we had Marvin Williams, who was flying for us as well. And again, you're going to come to one of my top. That season ends up being in my top because we had a fantastic team that year, played some brilliant football, and we chased Eastleigh all the way for the title. Never forget it. Never forget going down to Eastleigh and watching their last sort of 4 or 5 midweek games, praying that they might lose a game. But every time they won, we won, but we kept the pressure right on them. And the last, we just couldn't catch them. And that was the year that, as I said, as a team, they're outstanding. We had goal scorers all over the place. Played some great football with wingers, with Damien Scannell, and that was the year that we lost to Dover in the playoffs. And we were 12 points in front of Dover that year. And this is where the playoffs can, as a manager, get into your head, because when you finish second, I've always said for many years that whoever finishes second in any year deserves automatic promotion, and I think playoffs should be between the 3rd and 7th. It's only because the Football League, again, over the years, haven't allowed a 3rd or 4th team to go into the promotion from the National League into League Two. And then we talk about, that's another conversation, but that's the South. That's where the League Two clubs look after themselves. So we're very unfortunate again to finish second, but we had the most fantastic team that year. They got decimated the week before the playoff semi-final with injury, and I think Charlie Clough was there then, but we lost Clough with a hamstring. We lost Simon Downer. We lost our right back. I think it might, from memory, it was Kevin Amankwa came in that year. And I almost had a complete change. Clough actually played in the first leg injured and then couldn't play in the return leg. And I remember playing, I think we had to play 3 of our reserve team leg at home. And I think it was a draw at their place, and we came down and we went 1-0 up at home. But that was the Moses Emmanuel semi-final. I mean, the guy's always haunted me over the years. It's one of the reasons I signed him. But Moses scored. What really grates me to this day is that Chris Kinnear hadn't picked Emmanuel all season. The Dover fans hated Chris Kinnear for that and the fact that he never played him. And Dover got into those playoffs in the last kick of the normal season. So we weren't even thinking we were going to play them. We were scouting Havant, I think, at the time. We were scouting Havant because that's who got in it. But there was a bizarre set of circumstances in the last minute of that day of the season that meant that Dover actually threw a penalty as well, got through. And I remember just being so disappointed at the end. We were miles better than Dover. I played football as well. I hated the way they just smashed the ball forward to their massive players. For us to get beaten by them particularly as well, it was a huge disappointment. And as I said, 12 points is a massive amount of points over a season to be better than one team. And when you know you've lost it because of injury as well, to have 5 of our best players not available for that second leg was an absolute killer. And that was another dark day in the Doswell household, and another summer of wondering if I'd done as much as I could at the club, because I think that was probably my 5th year at that point, 5 years going up and down the motorway. The disappointment of that was a crushing summer again. So that was, that was reflected probably, I think, in what happened the following season, because the following season was when, and I've got to keep mentioning him, Steve McKim left, and rightly so. I was pushing him at the time to get into a management role of his own right because he was good enough. I also lost Paul Talfer, who went to America to go and manage, and they were my 2 closest allies really. And to lose your backroom staff as we did, the following season we never quite got it right with the backroom staff. I was travelling up. That's for now 14-15 season, very much on my own. And the biggest thing that happened that year within country mile was getting Bear to come to the club, because I should have appointed Beardy in the summer, but I wasn't sure how committed he was, because at the time he was commentating for Leeds United. He was their main commentator for Leeds. And I didn't know if, I know that he was fed up with the way that Eastleigh had treated him. He was fed up with the politics of football at the time. And I did speak to him in the summer, but I plumped for Peter Beadle. Should have called him Jeremy Beadle. But anyway, plumped for Beadle. Jamie Lawrence came in, did a brilliant job actually. Jamie, he was a victim of circumstance, but Jamie Lawrence had a big part to play in some of our best signings. I'll get back to that later. But I missed having someone to travel up with, and I missed someone that I could bounce off of. And I think the story of me and Beardy, which starts in the season of 2014, is one that was probably the catalyst to our real unbelievable times going forward, because the 2 of us, people have sort of talked about it being a Clough and Taylor type scenario. Anyone who knows us and knows me will tell you that he was as big a part of the management team as me. We fight like cat and dog at times. We bounce off each other brilliantly. We had the calming influence of Bobby Charles and Nicky Stevens in behind us. But the players loved it. The players loved the combination of the 2 of us, and they loved playing for us. And both of us could do the good cop and bad cop. I think we're both lunatics at times, the 2 of us together. But it's a mix and a partnership that works. And I must say that the success over the last 6 years, it's a partnership, and it's not. Ian's another one who won't put his head above the parapet. He's not looking for the interviews, but he had a career of being a Premier League footballer. He didn't need the profile. As he'll tell you, he was the 42nd best player in Leeds United history. He was great fun to be around Birdie, and the players loved him. And despite him having a fearsome reputation, I think he enjoyed, me probably dealing with a lot of the rubbish that had to be dealt with contracts and trying to get players sorted, and it left him to concentrate on what he loved doing, which was the football and being with the players. It's a unique combination, and it's one that's worked. It wouldn't be dismissive to say that we're almost joint managers together. If there was a role where you could say you were a joint manager, I think Ian and I have been that together for 6-7 years. It's just that I take the lead role. But as I said, don't ever underestimate, the fact that the two of us are just been a team. And without Bairdy coming in that season, we were so going the wrong way with players that weren't buying into the new setup. The players that when you signed them had their own personal problems. I won't go into that, but we had a poor season that year for lots of reasons. And I've got to say, if Bairdy didn't come in when he did, it wouldn't have surprised me if we'd ended up maybe fighting a problem against relegation that year, or certainly being more towards the bottom. And one of Ian's that year, one of Bairdy's best ever signings for this football club. I'm going to get asked a question, but I'm going to almost answer it with one of them. Is that Bairdy recommended that we sign Jamie Collins, and I got to be honest, he's not someone at the time that I've watched him. As you know, I watched thousands of games of football, knew every non-league player walking, and Jamie wasn't someone that I thought would fit in with. I thought he was a real loudmouth. I thought he took the mickey out of his manager when he was at Eastleigh at times, and I signed him with a little bit, but that was based around Bairdy saying, "You trust me, make sure we sign him," which we did, and he was my best and Ian's best ever signing. An absolute man mountain for this football club. Best skipper I've ever worked with. The best player as well. The football brain on him was incredible. But the way that he got our dressing room together the following season, and from that point on, the guy is an absolute. I mean, we're great friends now. But I almost get quite emotional when I talk about Jamie Collins, because we know what happened further down the line. But for a player that I didn't overly fancy, maybe more as a person, he probably didn't fancy me either. If I'm being honest, he probably thought I was useless as a manager. But what we did within a very short space of time, and was we mutually respected each other, and he realised actually I wasn't a bad manager, and I didn't know what I was talking about, and I realised very quickly that he was a very, very good footballer. So that was a relationship that wasn't supposed maybe to start, but when it did, it's one that I cherish. I absolutely cherish that one. So that's my toughest season, and that was a year. If Bairdy hadn't come in, I think that would have been me done at Sutton, because I think again I'd run my course. I've made bad appointments in the summer on the management staff. As I said, I must exclude Jamie Lawrence from that. And the signings in that dressing room weren't good signings. There was lots of internal politics. There was lots of unrest within the players, and that was sorted out come the end of the season by bringing in Bairdy and bringing in Jamie Collins.
I was going to say one more crucial bit about that season. We lost to Weston-super-Mare Sunday, 4th of January. Charlie Clough scored both those goals and then left. And during that period, I think, if I remember, you brought in Damien Scannell and Dan Fitchett, and we beat Ebbsfleet, Hemel Hempstead and Farnborough that month. I think that was a crucial month for us, sort of consolidating our position in that league that season.
Yeah, like I said, Bairdy came in the November, and Jamie Collins, I think, made his debut against Weston-super-Mare that day. And I said to Jamie at the end, we lost 3-2. What did you think? And he said, we've got a lot of work to do. But like you said, from that time, Betsy Gomez, there was the makings of the team. Dan Fitchett came in, and you see there, we beat Ebbsfleet 2-1. We drew with Havant 2-2. We beat Hemel Hempstead 2-1. We beat Farnborough 2-0. We went on a very, very good run after that. But that was the steadying of the ship. Up to that point, there were things that were going on within within the team and the club that weren't right, and it's very, very important we recognised it quickly, which we did, and two, that we did something about it, which again we did the following season.
And of course, that following season was an absolutely unbelievable season. I'm just going to actually look at a key transfer you made that season was bringing in Craig Eastman. You also actually signed Betsy Gomez during that season as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, that season was the catalyst behind what followed the next three seasons after, because Jamie Lawrence was the one who introduced us to Craig Eastman, and Craig is going to be up there as one of my best ever signings. And it was also Jamie Lawrence that introduced me to Rory Deacon. So what was happening is Jamie was basically training these players from league clubs, and for one reason or another, these players were struggling for a club. And Craig had gone away on holiday for 3 or 4 weeks. He expected to come back to lots and lots of offers. For some reason, they didn't materialise. And how we ever signed Craig Eastman at the level we were at is still beyond me. But that's probably a lot down to Jamie Lawrence recommending me and the club to Craig. And as I said, when you have your network of people in football, never underestimate the role that Jamie Lawrence played in getting some very, very good players and recommending good young players to me. Didn't get enough credit from me at the time. That's something I regret. I mean, Jamie and I are to this day still very good friends, but at the time when he left the football club, he was probably harshly dealt with by me, if I'm being honest, but not in a great place that year before Bailey came in. But as I said, I want to give him a lot of credit now, because looking back, Jamie Lawrence introduced me to those two, and I think Deacon, Eastman and Collins are going to be right up there as three of the best signings any football club could make at our level. But it was an amazing season, wasn't it? But, you know, that team was the catalyst of what went forward. Ross Stern, one of the best crossers of a ball that couldn't get in Bath City's team. You know, we were very good at plucking players away from clubs that weren't even getting in their team and then turning them into absolute, for us, at our level, superstars. Ross Stern was a brilliant signing for us. He was one of the best crossers of the ball. And I've had lots of very, very quick wingers, and Bailey will call them out of control speedboats because they go really give an end product. And Sterney was one of those players who gave you that end product. But what was crucial that year was we had the best centre-half partnership. Dean Beckwith coming with Jamie Collins that year, and those two together, they knew the game inside out from being together at Eastleigh. They were best friends travelling in the car together, and putting those two at the spine of your team was an absolute masterstroke, really, to get those two together. Dan Fitchett had a 20 league goal scoring season, and you know, Bairdy was on to Dan Fitchett in every training game, using Ian's experience of being like I said, an equivalent today, a Premier League centre forward, and he pushed Dan Fitchett. I saw him have Dan Fitchett in tears. I saw him have Dan Fitchett crying with laughter with him, but you know, Bairdy went and worked, and you know, who's ever going to forget that unbeaten run? I don't know how many it was in the end. Was it 24, 25, 26 games? We went on an unbeaten run that will never be rivalled again, I don't think.
It was another crucial signing that season, Tom Bolarumo, because I remember watching him pre-season. I just thought he's got so much raw talent. If you can get hold of him, and if he just gets final product sorted, he'll be some player. And he certainly did. He scored some crucial goals that season. Was an absolute powerhouse.
Yeah, we again, I'd watched Tom. Steve Watts, who's a very good friend of mine, had recommended that I look at him. And with Tom, it was me that, again, and this is where me and Ian bounce off of each other so well. Bairdy probably wasn't having him at that point. And I just said, look, his impact off the bench was good, but he was very, very raw at the time. Did good, but also defensively is very, very, you know, got to be in a good shape, and we must do other things. do other things. But he worked with Tom, but it was me that turned around and said, "Listen, I'm giving this lad a chance. He needs to be given a chance." And I think we played him one game, and it was almost from that point on he played every game thereafter. So, you've got Betsy Gomez in that team, you've got Tom Bolanara, Dan Fitchett scoring. So our two wide players were Ross Stern and Bolanara. And you had Dan Wishart, who was an unbelievably attacking left back. And Dan Wishart was brought in to protect Jamie Collins. So when people couldn't get down the sides of Jamie so easily with Dan Wishart's pace. And you start looking at that team, and you're seeing that team. That's the team that really you look at and say, yeah, Tommy Wright. Even in the senior cups that year, he was only 17. I brought him down from Southampton with me. He was a little, he was just a little player in Southampton. It was Stuart Munro that said to me, "You must go and sign Tommy Wright." Stuart's recommendation at that time, he was only 17 or 18, and Tommy came in that year as well. And you look at that season. When was the last game we lost? Yeah, just give me a second, because I remember when the run started. Whitehall that year. Right, so we lost 2-0 to Whitehawk on the 1st of August. And I was in the car with Ian Baird, Stuart Munro came to watch, and myself. And the team, for whatever reason, was still not quite right. There were individuals in that dressing room that had personal issues. And me and Bairdy looked at each other and said, if we don't deal with these issues now, it's going to ruin our whole season. And we were ruthless that day. We got rid of 3 or 4 players. And it wasn't easy to do because we got on with everybody, but we were ruthless that day, brought 3 or 4 players in. And from that point on, we never really looked back. But there was Tom, I don't know if you've got it in front of you. Looking at there, we lost 1-0 to Hayes. There you go.
Hayes and Yedding, yeah, I remember that game.
We lost 1-0 to Hayes and Yedding on the 7th of November. And myself and Bairdy, I think we had Bishop Stortford away the next game. And me and Bairdy went into that dressing room and said, if you don't want to do anything this season, it needs to start from now. We made the point they were massively underperforming with the amount of quality we had in the dressing room. I remember him saying to Tom Bollerimwa, he almost had him up by the throat that day, Bairdy, pushing him up against the wall, saying, "You're going to play today and you're going to perform." And that from that day on, we never lost. And in fact, we won virtually every game. It was an incredible. And at that point, from memory, I think 17, 18, 19 points behind Ebbsfleet. Probably 15th or 16th in the league. And if you bear with me for 2 seconds, because I think this is worth doing. Let's just quickly go through. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28 games unbeaten. And the glorious part of that end run was beating Maidstone, 1,000 people at home. And Dan Fitchett getting across the near post, which Bairdy had been teaching him for years. And Dan Fitchett scoring the opening goal. And then Betsy Gomez scoring a penalty. I don't remember Betsy did the old thing to his ears, to the Ebbsfleet fan.
Yeah, I do.
50,000 bottles thrown at him. But, for a team to go 28 games unbeaten, it's just incredible. And, we knew that we had something special on our hands. But I think the other thing, Tom, that we must mention was that the year that I decided it was important to bring it as being a community football club, and that Kate and I invested. It was a very soft loan to the club, interest-free loan, and I sat down with Bruce, and again another master stroke from the chairman, because he didn't have to keep backing the ideas. He didn't. I was basically saying to him, look, this is going to cost the best part of £500,000, £600,000. But I promise you that it will bring the club together. I promise you that it'll have so many good additions to the club, and we will be able to pay that loan back to me at some point. And I don't think in the first year or two I even asked for any of the loan to be paid back, because I wanted to give the club an income first. But Bruce was a visionary as well. Dave Fairbrother, again, very. The Sutton fans have got to know that they have got the best board going. They've added to that with Adrian Barry. I mean, Adrian has been with me for that time, and I love talking about people like Adrian Barry and Bruce and Dave Fairbrother and Brian Williams. Graham Starnes, a great person behind the scenes. Secretary Ray Ward. And if I forget anybody, it's not because they're all great people. But it was just a brilliant football club. Bairdy was he couldn't get over it, Bairdy, because it got because of the politics at Eastleigh and the backstabbing, and it does happen in football. And every game, every month, he'd say to me, "I can't believe what a fantastic football club this is off the pitch." Him and Brian Williams used to spend 20 minutes before a game having a chat, and what a lovely thing that is. Brian, who in those days was probably 85, would come down and sit in the dugout before the game with Ian whilst they were warming up. And it's little things like that. You've got so many fantastic people up there, and thankfully one or two new blood has been added as we've gone along. There's too many good people to mention, I think. But if they're listening to this, they know who they are. Mickey Joyce coming on board. I love Mickey. Again, the Mickey Joyce and Mickey Stevens combination, and the old stories coming out, and terrible quizzer, Mickey, and used to send a glass eye to sleep on the train on the away trips, but. Just loved being around those people. Loved listening to the stories. Loved listening to Mark Frake. Loved listening to Sarah. Who did that amazing bike ride that time. I'll never forget that. She rode to every ground away from home. You look at all the people that were involved. Millsy at the time. Really close to Millsy, and he was a big part of the club. We had Gareth Miller, who was an amazing. Gareth put so much effort into the club, into the youth team, into the junior section. People that gave up so much time and money, for free. You don't get that. It's very rare what you get at Sutton. And in the end, Sutton gets into your blood. And as I said, the 2 or 3 times when I thought I'd have to leave because of disappointments, how could you leave people behind, or leave people like the support that we had and also the board that we had. But putting the 3G in was an absolute. Again, I've got to say it was an absolute masterstroke, because from that point on, Clive King with SUFCtv. I mean, what you guys do on an absolute shoestring is a miracle. I've got to say that. And Clive was trying to keep up with what we were doing on the pitch. And he was doing it with 50 pence. And he was up against other clubs who had HD cameras and all sorts of things. His brother, Steve, then sets up the disabled team. And one of my biggest joys was before the game, watching our 3, 2, 4, 5, and then we ended up with numerous disabled teams. And seeing the joy on those kids' faces week in, week out. And Kingy was, again, what a fantastic guy to have at this football club. And then we go on to creating a women's section. Tony Henderson, Tony Dolbeth. Tony Dolbeth and I, some of the funniest interviews you're ever going to have. The amount of times he had to cut them because I couldn't, because of him looking at me in absolute dread, wondering what I was going to say next. But Tony Dolbert is an absolute legend for me at the club. Does so much unseen, brilliant interviewer, but always has got a complete look of panic on his face when he asks me a controversial question. So I'm trying to mention the people, but that 3G allowed us to get the girls' teams going. It allowed the under-8s through to the 16s to join up with the club, and no longer were they just under the banner of Sutton United. They were actually training at the club. And I think that has been the biggest singular thing that's got this football club to gates of 1,500 and 2,000. And it is the hub of the community, and that's what I was hoping would happen, and it did. It did happen. But that year, we only lost 4 games. Although we had a terrible start, we weren't happy with the start. We only lost 4 games. And this is a good level of football confidence. We had a plus 51 goal difference. We hardly conceded any goals with Beckwith and Collins in that spine of the team. And then we had, as I said, the brilliance really of your Dan Fitchett getting 20 goals, and Ross Stern and Bolarum were a brilliant team, and probably one of my favourite teams that year, because a lot of those then stayed on with us.
Just another crucial game that season. Actually, I'm just looking at Maidstone 2-1 away. What are your memories of that? I think you actually give that game mention, but that one was sort of the catalyst for us really just pushing towards that title. I think that was probably the biggest statement we made that we're going to win this league.
I think that the biggest statement we did of winning the league was, again, David Mathers, who's another board member, whose dad supported the club, and he's been with us for probably 100 years. Dave Mathers, that's how old he is. Dave Mathers took us to Jersey in the pre-season, and we had the best weekend in Jersey. I remember getting food poisoning that evening before we played the Jersey rep side, and I'm convinced it was food poisoning, but Jamie Collins, myself and Sterney and a couple of others ended up staying up all night having drinks. And that was the night that I got to know Jamie Collins, and that was probably the night that he got to know me. And I think that, if I look back at that weekend, Bairdy knocked my door at 11 o'clock to get me up for the game against the rep team, and I was so ill from the food poisoning stroke, the amount of vodka that I drank with Jamie. But I just remember that weekend in Jersey being a brilliant weekend, and that was a catalyst to the 3G pitch being done. That was a catalyst to that particular season. And I look back at that Maidstone game, and this will be a surprise for you, but it is going to be my fourth worst moment as a Sutton United manager, because Bairdy and I and the team knew. And at that point, Jamie Collins was telling me week in, week out, Gaffer, we're going to win this. And we were still a fair few points behind Ebbsfleet at that point. But we went to Maidstone in front of 3,500 people. That was the gate that night. Massive Sutton support. Really big game. Wishart and Eastman gave us a brilliant 2-1 win on the night. And I expected Bruce to come down the steps from the Maidstone stand, a little bit of a hug as we did, a little bit of an embrace. And he looked at me, and it looked like someone had died. And I was expecting him to tell me, and I'm being honest now, I was expecting him to tell me that something had gone wrong at my house, or that, my dad had maybe passed away, or my mum had. I was expecting. He just looked terrible. And the news that he gave me was that one of our players was playing about a month before, and apparently was registered incorrectly, and that the likelihood is that we were going to lose the 3 points for that game. And I can't remember the circumstance of it, apart from all of us, even when we played Ebbsfleet and beat Ebbsfleet, we didn't know whether those 3 points were going to be taken away from us until right to the end of the season. And that was my worst moment, thinking, oh my God, we've gone 20. I think at that point we were 22 games unbeaten. We'd just beaten Maidstone in front of 3,500. And through an administration error, and it was a real minor error as well. It was one that I couldn't even get my head round. But it was an error. And at that point, that would have put us back to being about 10 points away from Ebbsfleet rather than 4. So we were 7 points away from him going to Maidstone, and as I said, I had a skipper in the ear saying, "Don't worry, Gaffer, we've got this." And that was a Tuesday night, the Maidstone game. We were only 4 points behind him. But when Bruce told me the news, it looked like we'd be deducted 3 points. That was horrendous, and it was horrendous not knowing whether to tell the players, when to tell the players. And I remember ringing Jamie Collins up. Me and Bairdy had to ring Jamie up, and I said to him, "Look, there's possibly some bad news coming in here. Looks like we're going to lose 3 points for the Maidstone game." And typical Collins, really. I remember him on the phone, or I think it was a training, say, "Gaffer, we'll win it. We'll win it anyway. We're going to win the last 7 games. Tell the secretary, I can't remember who it was at the time, not to worry about his mistake. I'll win every single game for you. And I remember looking at him thinking, that's a big thing. That's a big statement to make. And our last games, we beat Margate 4-0, Stortford 2-0, Ebbsfleet 2-0, Chelmsford 2-0, and finished off beating Oxford City 1-0. So the confidence that Jamie had of his team and what we could do was probably well founded. But I do remember that evening driving home. Barely to tell you this, I was speechless for probably about 3 days. I didn't know what to do with myself because I thought an administration error was going to ruin my season. Not just mine, everybody's. And I'll never forget Bruce's face that night. It looked like there'd been a death in the family. That's how bad it was.
But one of the better evenings for you that season must have been the celebrations on that Saturday after he lifted the title against Chelmsford.
Yeah, we to be honest, when we'd beaten Ebbsfleet, we knew we'd won that league. Ebbsfleet turned up to our place, and again, I've got to say, Bairdy looked at me and went, "They don't fancy this." Well, the first 15 minutes of the game, they bloody fancied it because they were all over us. And he said to me, "Don't worry." He said, he thought they reflected a lot about them players. And we had the in a little bit. And as soon as that first goal went in, and then Betsy scored afterwards, Ebbsfleet didn't really. They put the white flag up that day. And talking to Danny Kedwell, who's with me now at Havant, about that year, he just said we couldn't believe that you kept going and kept going, and you kept looking like you were going to catch us. And he said they bottled it in the end. And I mean, Jamie Collins, I'll never forget, he came in the dressing room and announced to everyone that Ebbsfleet had already paid for a trip to go to Disney or go to America, Las Vegas, I think it was. They'd already booked that in the January to go to Las Vegas for their promotion party. We couldn't even afford to go to Clapton-on-Sea for our promotion party. And the lads used things like that. They just used that, where they already think they've won it. And, and when this run started and kept going and kept going and kept going, that team was unbeatable. And it was a pleasure to manage that team and just to be part of that experience. It was brilliant. And like you said, that day in front of 1,600 at Chelmsford, everyone on the pitch, watching the skipper lift the cup, watching the joy of everyone at the club was, I think it's worth spending the amount of time on this season because I think it was one of our best ones.
So now moving on to the next season, of course, you're taking that team into the National League. Some amazing away trips in there. What a season that was, because of course it included the infamous FA Cup run. But people forget we got a top half finish that season. Was it 12th place we finished? The top half finish. That's unbelievable for first season.
I mean, it's almost. That 16-17 season was on the back of what they'd done the season before. That team to go 28 games unbeaten went into that National League, and it is scary. It is scary when you look at the likes of playing Chesters and Dagenhams and Forest, Lincoln City, well-established football league teams, and little old Sutton, who only a few years ago were still darning socks. We're in with that sort of competition, and you look again, and I've got to put him in this category now. We then made another amazing signing in getting Nicky Bailey back to the football club. Played championship football for Middlesbrough, and that was the year that we got Rory Deacon. So to sign Bailey and Rory Deacon, both again recommendations really from Jamie Lawrence. Recommended them to me as peak players. And so you had Eastman, Deacon, Bailey, Beckwith. You had a spine there of a real proper man's team. And the thing was, we never took ourselves too seriously. At that point, we knew that we were punching so way above our weight in terms of our budget. We were probably in the bottom 6 or 7 of the budget. But we gained real confidence, from going to the likes of Forest Green, who at that time were playing Barcelona, tiki-taki Man City football. And to go there and get a 1-1 draw, against Mark Cooper, who not only fancied himself, but he fancied his team a lot. We spent 15 minutes chasing shadows, but I always remember the team got to grips with that, and then not only did we get the equaliser, that showed the character of our team, because from that point on we could have won that game. And that's what we became. I think we became a real irritant to the likes of Mark Coopers and the Cowleys at Lincoln. We decided, win, lose or draw, that we would enjoy ourselves, and win or lose, we were on the booze. That was the little thing for that year. And we actually got in people's faces. We were called raggy arse rovers. You know, you look at other fans of the big clubs looked at us like we were absolute minnows, but we knew in that dressing room that we had 16, 17 players that could mix it with anybody, and I mean anybody. And that season showed it to be. We went to that year. That's probably my favourite away trip. That and Tranmere Rovers. When we beat Tranmere away and beat Lincoln away in front of a bounce. You know, Lincoln were bouncing at the time. The Cowleys had really got them going. And we beat them 3-1 away. And Rory Deacon scored the third goal, came off of his backside, I think. I remember getting on the team coach, and Jamie, Bruce at the time, and Adrian Barry, they all got off at one stop right outside Lincoln's ground. And this is most clubs would have travelled overnight to Lincoln. Most clubs would have had a hotel stay. We left on the day, stopped right outside their ground, and I'll never forget Bruce had to spend about 300 quid of his own money on vodka, Jack Daniels for Craig Dundas. Let's not forget Dundo, the legend. Big shout out to Duns. But Jamie Collins came out, and it looked like we bought the whole off licence. And we had a 4-hour coach trip back. And there was some real, that epitomised everything that we were about. We were going to all these much bigger clubs and basically beating them quite comfortably. At home, we beat Torquay in that first month. We beat Macclesfield in that first month. And we beat Dagenham and Redbridge at home as well. So I remember looking at the fixture list when it first came out, thinking, Christ, we got 5 or 6 out of 6 were ex-league clubs that we were playing in that first month. But we had this thing of just not, we just didn't fear anybody. But as I said, to them we beat Tranmere Rovers at home live on the television. I think that's when their manager Brabin got the sack after that game. And you just keep going through it. Just an amazing, just an amazing first season.
And actually, just a game I've come upon, bit of an underrated game. We battered Woking 4-1, but it was also your 500th game. There was a great presentation for the match. That must be one of your proudest moments as your time at Sutton United.
Yeah. Again, it was a nice gesture. It was a nice accolade to get. Didn't really focus too much on that side of it, if I'm being honest, in terms of how many appearances I've done. I was just focused on being the best we could be. And you look at that year, as you said, to finish. I think we finished 12th that year, didn't we?
Yeah.
And but the only reason we finished 12th was because of the FA Cup. If the FA Cup hadn't got in the way, we would have, in our first year in the National League, have been very close to making those playoffs. As it happened, the FA Cup got that much in the way that at one point I had to sit down with Jamie Collins and Bairdy, all of us as a three, and just go, we need to dig in here a little bit, because if we're not careful, we could get sucked into the other end of the table. But I mean, the FA Cup run will go down in the history of the football club. You can go right the way through to the most horrendous draw in the first round was to draw Forest Green, who say at the time were probably 10 times our budget, playing this fantastic style of football that no one else was able to replicate or even try and replicate. And that was the start of the Rory Deacon Cup run, because he scored. They went 1-0 up Forest Green against us, and I was thinking, here we go. But Sterney got us back in the game with a long range shot. And then Deacon popped up with one of his last-minute winners, and that's what kept happening in that cup run. Rory Deacon, a header as well, and I think he doesn't score that many headers, Rory, but it's a brilliant header, about 10 yards out, and that set us on the way to go to Dartford. And funny enough, Tom, Dartford is probably one of my most favourite games ever of being a Sutton manager, because it was like watching two teams just go at each other from the first minute. That day, neither team wanted to defend, and every time we scored, they scored, and it was just a brilliant game. I remember a huge Sutton contingent going down for that game, And I think we went 2-0 up, 2-1, 2-2, 3-2, 3-3. And that was the year, of course, we signed Max Biamu, and that was a Max Biamu and Rory Deacon day and a Sterney day, because all three of those got 2 goals, and that was a brilliant win to go to Dartford and beat them 6-3. Set us up for that Cheltenham game, and again, BBC cameras were there. We weren't live for that game, but they were there to report on the game. And again, Deacon came up with that unbelievable last-minute winner, which the crowd, I remember, absolutely ballistic. And the excitement of the goal, watched everyone diving on top of everyone when Deacon scored, and that set us up for for what was coming. And at that point, we were all listening to the BBC drawing the balls out. That lovely magical feel of the balls in the bag. And to get Wimbledon, a local derby at home, and it was the first ever sellout at Gander Green Lane. It was a 5,000 sellout, 5,013 to be precise. And I always remember thinking that, and certainly the dressing room felt that we had a real chance at home against. Neil Ardley was really negative about our pitch. He was really negative about how his players would be able to play on the pitch. When the reality of it was that pitch was as good as any pitch. It was a fantastic pitch, but I think Neil almost had got to the point where he'd made it so negative that his players didn't fancy it that day. And we had so many chances to win. We should have won that day, and the disappointment afterwards was in the dressing room was palpable, because we probably thought we'd lost our chance. The biggest blow that day was we also lost Nicky Bailey after the game through injury. So when we went to the replay. Before that, we obviously had the draw on the Monday, and we obviously we drew Leeds United. It was Wimbledon or Sutton United versus Leeds United, and at that point we also knew that we'd be live on the television. Well, that was worth £250,000 to be live on the television in that round. It was another sellout at Wimbledon, and the Wimbledon away game, I think, is up there. Because I don't know if I could define the Wimbledon game as being better than the Leeds United game, better than beating Ebbsfleet. I just think that there's 3 or 4, 5 games. I've got my 5 worst games, but Wimbledon away is a memory that I will treasure to my dying day. And as much for what happened off the pitch afterwards and the celebrations at the club, and Collins and Beckwith ended up sleeping in the President's Lounge. Too drunk to go home. Just being applauded by the supporters, getting off the team coach back into the club. It was such an impromptu thing as well. We all got on the phones. Come on, let's everyone go back to the club. And that club was bouncing, absolutely bouncing to about 3 o'clock in the morning. And players, supporters with the board, with supporters with us that I've never seen before. And to beat Wimbledon that night, to beat them comfortably in the end, 3-1. And again, Rory Deacon, what a strike! Low backlift, smashed it in the top left-hand corner. Biamu then gets on the back of another Rory Deacon run, and then Dan Fitchett lobbing the goalkeeper for the 3rd goal. And I just remember chaos. I remember running into the stand where the Sutton supporters were. My dad was there, my brother was there. Very emotional. Lily was there, Connor was there, all my whole family were there, and it was a very emotional moment after the game. And I remember looking at Bairdy just thinking, wow, this is, because for a man who played for Leeds United for that many years, he's a Leeds legend really. And knowing that Bairdy was going to be up against Leeds United, and as a club we played Leeds United in 1970, and seeing those crowds back in the day, I just thought, oh my God, Sutton United are going to play Leeds United at Gander Green Lane, and it was almost unthinkable that could happen.
And now, of course, moving on to that big Arsenal game, obviously after beating Leeds, which was an amazing day. In fact, the Leeds and Arsenal games, just to come up against 2 names like that, it really was.
I don't think, Tom, it's fair to go on to the Arsenal game without talking about the Leeds United game, because let's just take a second here. Sutton United have beaten Leeds United in the 4th round of the FA Cup. Just think about that for 1 second. because we went on and played Arsenal, no one talks enough about us beating Leeds United. But we beat Leeds United. And Jamie Collins scored one of the most nerveless penalties that you're ever going to see. I remember young kids running across the pitch, diving on top of him when he scored. I remember just looking round the whole. I remember looking at Bruce and the board in amazement, thinking that not only were we 1-0 up, we were outplaying them. Rory Deacon was playing like a bloody Brazilian that day. And not only did we could have been 2 or 3-0 up against Leeds. But what you've got to remember is the preparation that went into that Leeds United game from the staff and also the players. We turned up on the coach because we stayed in a hotel. And I'll tell you, we had a team meeting at that hotel. And I looked at those players' faces and they genuinely believed they were going to beat Leeds United. We talked about what Leeds United would be. We guessed 9 of their 11 team, even at the fact that we knew they were playing maybe. But they still have 6 players playing against us that day that are in the Leeds United team now, So this bit of Leeds played a weakened team. Yeah, they might have done, but they still had 6, 7, 8 of their first team players. So let's just stop again. Sutton United have beaten Leeds United. Incredible. On live television, in front of another gate of 5,000, might have been another 2,000 on top of that, I reckon. So that's the day that for me has got to live in the history of the football club forever, because we beat Leeds United.
Do you know what, from a personal perspective, actually, I would say that occasion was my favourite one. That was actually better than the Wimbledon game for me, and better than Arsenal coming into town. So yeah, I completely agree about that one being one of the best games in the club's history. It was an amazing Sunday afternoon. So obviously it was Arsenal next. Arsenal coming to town. That's a whole different kettle of fish. That's the media coming down to Gandon Green Lane. It was absolutely huge. It was the occasion was huge for the club.
So I'm sat in front of the telly again on the Monday, and I'm watching the draw, and I'm sort of still half hoping I might get Southampton as my dream tie. And the most important thing was we got a home draw, and so Sutton United came out first, and there was only about 2 or 3 balls left, if I remember. And I actually remember looking at through the glass of the balls being picked out, and I remember seeing the number that he was pulling out for the away team, looking at the screen, and I knew it was Arsenal. And then when he actually said it was Arsenal, I just remember screaming, because at that point Kate was away in Spain seeing her parents, so I was on my own. And I remember just screaming in the lounge, literally screaming. And at that time, everybody else who lived local was getting to the club for the draw. So we were watching the draw from Sutton United. So the absolute clubhouse was in mayhem. My house was in mayhem. And my whole life and everybody else's life changed from that point on to mayhem. Because I've never experienced anything like it. From India to China, Japan, Bangladesh, Italy, Spain, the media descended on us. And again, I've got to mention him, Tony Dolbear. What an amazing job Tony did during that time. A volunteer who works, he had to cope with, and I can't believe hundreds, if not thousands, of interview requests there were to come down to this little southwest London club that were going to be taking on a Premiership giant. And it was something that nobody could even explain to you. You could almost make a film about it, and the film you go with that couldn't have happened. In fact, they should make a film about it. It was that good.
And after Arsenal game, actually in that Arsenal game, what's not talked about is we played really well that second half. I remember thinking we could have got a draw out that game. I think we hit the bar a couple of times.
Tom, we were brilliant from the first minute on. Good in the second half. We were brilliant. I mean, this is a National League team, and still other National League clubs viewed us as almost gypsies, if you like, as the league. We were considered a pub team. We actually thrived on being called the pub team, and we played Arsenal, who turned up with bodyguards for every player. You got the likes of Alexis Sanchez, Theo Walcott, Oxlade-Chamberlain. I mean, I could just keep reeling them off to you. And my team and Bailey's team were an absolute credit to the football club, because my players put in every effort, and it was only a cross-come shot, half deflected, that beat us to go 1-0 down. And I remember that day Jamie had a brilliant chance from maybe 7-8 yards out with a header that would have got us back to 2-1. I think Rory hit the bar or something very close. I think Rory did hit the bar. No one talked about it enough because of what happened afterwards, and it's one of my massive disappointments. I've never watched the Arsenal game back. Never been able to watch the game back because I was so disappointed what happened after the game. I was quite disappointed about the nature of the pitch invasion, and that the players never got, for me, the credit they deserved, because the limelight was taken away with what happened afterwards. And that was my biggest regret for the players, that they deserved far more accolades than they got, because the press concentrated on what had happened after or during the game, on a not off the field situation, when, as you quite rightly said, people should have been lauding the players for getting to the 5th round of the FA Cup and putting in an unbelievable performance against Arsenal. So, and ironically, the Arsenal game I don't put in there as one of my favourite memories, because it's actually a disappointing memory for me in many respects. And I think I will sit down and watch it, especially he's in these unusual times where you've got to forgive and forget, and that's something that I've struggled to do, if I'm being honest, over this last 3 years. But maybe in the next week or two I'll sit down and rewatch the game and just remind myself of what an amazing achievement those players gave to this football club, and the best times, the best team ever that I've managed, the best collection of players, the best individuals, but my God, the best captain, an unbelievable player for me. And just for him to score that penalty, for him to get the accolade, and people having their T-shirts printed with him on and mugs made, and he deserved every bit of that, because Jamie Collins and Bailey were a huge part of what this unbelievable 3-4 years became. And Rory Deacon, great times.
So now we discussed the brilliant top half finish we got that season, and of course the FA Cup run. And we ended that season, at 2016-17 season, quite well. Beat Gateshead 3-0, Chester 5-2. So there was that little bit of momentum. There was that good momentum coming into the next season now. And of course, we opened that season with the Leyton Orient home game. And what a marker we left down for the season, where we really pushed to get that top spot.
I mean it was that again was a situation where, as I said, you've got to remember, once the FA Cup game was over against Arsenal, do you know that nearly 3/4 of a billion people watched that game worldwide? It was a huge amount of people that watched that game worldwide. And when we sat down as a group and said, listen, if we're not at the other end of the table, when you talk about that was on the back of everyone getting their heads back on needing to be in this league still, and making sure that we didn't get into any problems. The following year for me was as good as the previous year, because I think it was at the end of March that we were top of the table in March, and that was against Lincoln's and Tranmere's. And you could just keep Wrexham's, you could name so many ex-league clubs. And this little, again, I'll say it again, this little club from southwest London with a bang average National League budget was top of the National League. And we probably ran out of steam, if the truth be known. We weren't financially in a position to bring in any more players. And to finish third in the league that year was, again, that group of players went above and beyond what should have been normal for a budget that we had to finish third. And then probably, again, it's got to be up there in my... So here's my fourth massive disappointment, would be that I did desperately want to go to Wembley and manage Sutton at Wembley. I've never been to Wembley as a player. I've never done it as a manager. And I was desperate for those players to go and play at Wembley. I didn't really mind if we won or lost at Wembley. I was very much on record at the time. I was getting so worried for the club that if we went into the Football League that we didn't have the infrastructure. We didn't even have any full-time members of staff off these clubs with 40, 50 staff just to welcome you into their club. So I can't begin to tell you how unprepared as a club, we would have been had we been promoted. But I did want to get to Wembley, and that was a crushing blow that day to lose to a Boreham Wood side that we were better than, I believe, during the season, much better than. But on that day, they really outplayed us, if I'm being honest. And despite when we got back to 2-1, I've watched that game back. The last 15 minutes, we put them under so much pressure, and I think we hit the post in the last minute. But I also remember it being about 100 degrees on the pitch. It was an incredibly hot day, but they thoroughly deserved to beat us on the day, Boreham Wood, and that ranks at the end as a disappointment. But if you can take stock of the whole season, how did a team from our budget and our neck of the woods, how did we ever finish third? And we were chasing Macclesfield all the way, and Macclesfield kept winning in the last minute of every game for the last 7 games. We just couldn't catch them. But maybe that was a good thing in the end, because I think if we won that league and gone up, I just don't know how Bruce and the board and everyone else could have coped with no full-time staff to. I remember League Two, they were almost panicking if we had got in there, because we then had to employ a chief executive. Well, that would have been 25. When we started looking at the costs of what it would cost us, it would have bankrupted us within about 5 minutes. So maybe it was for the best, but it didn't feel like that. And I was desperate to get Bruce to Wembley, get the board to Wembley, and the players. They were an incredible group of players that brought this club 3 years of a journey, really.
And actually, just looking at the players that season, Tommy Wright had a superb season up front. He also brought back the likes of Tom Bollerimwa and Harry Buteman to the club that season.
Yeah, again, the catalyst was a spine. We always had a fantastic keeper in Ross Warner. Ross Warner was a brilliant signing for me. So we had a very good goalkeeper. The Collins-Beckwith partnership was virtually unbreakable. Wishart, a left back, giving us that pace to protect Jamie down the sides. We always had good players. Eastman was an outstanding player. Bailey, outstanding player. Rory Deacon one side, Bolinara the other. When you start naming the team, and we also brought in Kenny Davis that year as well. And Kenny's one of the most underrated players out there in non-league football. And I watched him play for Braintree under the Cowleys. And, we were getting all of these players, and they could have earned a lot more money elsewhere with the clubs that were paying it. The Baileys and the Eastmans and the Deacons wanted to play for the club. It suited them in a lot of ways for their personal circumstances. But, you had some superb players there. Louis John started to make his mark that season. But Tommy Wright, Tommy Wright was someone that I've known him since he was 11 years of age, Tommy. Again, deserves a huge amount of credit for backing him into me and constantly giving Tommy the support that Tommy needed. And, Tommy was an absolute superstar this year. And I've got to say, one of the best ever centre-forward performances that I've seen is watching him beat up those 3 massive lumps from Dover. There's a shock, isn't it? Dover having 3 massive lumps at the back. Dover away, Tommy Wright, run them absolutely ragged. I remember me and Bairdy talking at the end saying that's one of the best performances we've seen from someone who's 5'8", to be up against that back 5 at the time and run them ragged was one of the best performances that I'd seen.
So now moving on to the next season, obviously we're coming off the back of that 3rd place, and how did you approach that next season? We had a really good start as well. We picked up 7 points out of our first 3 games, which included a great win over Salford.
Yeah, I just remember that I felt one of the defining moments of that season. Whenever you're going up levels, the National League level is a very, very good level. You have to have a goal scorer. You have to have someone that you can hang your hat on to get your 15, 20 goals. And we genuinely believe that Tommy Wright at that point in his career was going to be the one that would do that for us. And I think that was that not the year that we played Orient away and beat Orient away, top ones. And it was such an innocuous injury. The left back, Tommy was running him ragged that day, and it was a push in Tommy's back that made him stumble. Never forget the Orient fans booing him off the pitch as well, and everyone thought we were doing it to time waste and all the rest of it. But this will probably be my fifth biggest disappointment of the time at Sutton, was this injury, and that he was going to be out of football for a whole year. Because that kid was destined to go to a Championship or League One club, and we had our best goal scorer taken out of that team, and it's very, very hard to buy in another Tommy Wright. Tommy Wright had been brought through the ranks by us. He'd been gently pushed to, we'd put him on some great loans. He scored 50 goals for Salisbury that season. He'd been to Farnborough on loan and had done well. So Tommy had. And he'd learned, again, the group loved Tommy Wright. Again, I don't want to keep on, but we had an experienced group, and Eastman, Bailey, Collins, Beckwith took Tommy under their arm. And he was turning into a top player who would have, in my opinion, if he hadn't had the injury, gone on to be certainly League One, but it wouldn't have surprised me if he'd gone one higher at that point. So that was my biggest disappointment that year. And I've got to be honest, the amount of effort that had gone into the previous 2 years, the FA Cup run, and then finishing third, the disappointment of losing out at Wembley was when, when I was also diagnosed with diabetes as well. And, it was the onset of my mum and dad not being well. Dad was in and out of hospital a lot, so was mum. And I started to feel, very, very tired driving up. And that was a time when it was as much through health and realising, I think, that I'd just run out of juice again. I'd done 10 years at Eastleigh and run out of juice, and I think I got to 11 years at Sutton, and the tank was empty. And I think that was possibly reflected in some of the performances that year and where we ended up. Maybe my enthusiasm wasn't as 100% as I normally am. Maybe I've gone to 95% or 90%. But we still finished 10th that season. My last game with the football club was beating Gateshead 4-2 at home. So I was really pleased to walk away with that win. And I knew that I was leaving Bairdy with a bit of a poison chalice, to be honest. It wasn't an easy time to take over that last couple of months of the season. Obviously with me saying initially that I was going, which I wanted to, was to have a break and have a rest and see if I, felt better about me. And, I spent a lot of time looking after mum and dad. But within a couple of months of not driving up, you got to remember I was driving 2.5 hours a day, 4 days a week. And it was a lot of time in the car. A lot of times Ian and I were stuck on the M25 for hours. It wasn't sometimes 2 hours, it could be 4 hours. And the reality of it is you can't keep doing it. The reason that anyone who travels up for any distance on their own, you can do it for a short period of time. After a while, it becomes very, very wearing on you. So that was the reason. I realised after a couple of months that actually I didn't miss the drive at all. And it was time for me to focus on getting my health better, being closer to home, still being involved. I knew I'd be involved in football, but the love affair, it will never be over because the club's now very much in the blood. But the love affair of being the manager was over, and the next journey began, which obviously was the appointment of Matt Gray, which, as you know, I was hugely behind, and so was Ian at the time, Ian Baird. And I've got to say, I think Matty's done an absolutely phenomenal job this year, and I always knew he would, but it was important after the start. People were questioning him. It was really disappointing for me to see our fans questioning a young manager. Highly to Bruce, felt he was so aware of the culture of the club, and I just didn't want anyone taken over from me that didn't understand what the club meant to everybody. And very early on, And I think he proved himself to be a fantastic appointment, because that was not an easy first year. He had to cope with obviously me and you've got to look back at the season that Matt had, and it's kept going. It's in the National League. That was an achievement in itself. For Matt to finish where he finished was a brilliant achievement. And he should be very, very proud of himself, and the board should again, for appointing a young manager. I think Matt made a brilliant appointment bringing Jason Goodliff in with him as well. The two of them are great football people in that circle. But he also kept Jamie Collins around him, and I keep coming back to him. He kept Craig Eastman, he kept Harry Buterman, he kept Kenny Davis. There's some great players still left in that team, and I just hope that with what's happening at the moment in the football world, that that all of us, all of us at the club, whether it's my club now or at Sutton, that the financial implications don't get too heavy.
I just want to actually have a look at a couple of fantastic memories in your final season. We played against Adrionians and Bohemians. Can you talk about your memories of those matches?
Yeah, two of. Again, I had to pinch myself. I think we've been invited to Challenge Cup. I didn't really understand what the competition was about, but just thought it would be great fun for this group of players, because, as I said, you've got to remember as well how well they got on away from the pitch. So, as I said, win, lose or draw, especially away from home, some of the train trips we used to have back, with all the supporters on the train with us as well, coming back, whether we won, lost or draw, the atmosphere, Mickey Joyce getting his music out and everyone having a sing along, and plenty of Coronas being drunk, and plenty of Jack Daniels, Dundas drinking Jack Daniels, and it was a magical time. And I just went when Bruce said, "Look, should we do it?" I just thought, imagine getting the opportunity for this group of players to go and play against a Scottish team, a Welsh team. It would suit us right. I'll never forget going to Dublin. I'll never forget coming out against a very, very good Bohemians team, but seeing again and the support, and just looking up at just look all the time. But they, it was a lot of money to come to Airdrie and watch in Scotland. It was to Ireland, and they travelled in such numbers. And I've got to say that the relationship that day between Bohemians and us, the players and the supporters together, was one of the best. We had a brilliant night in Dublin. One of the best nights. Well, we would have done, but Bairdy let me down again. He said he was going to come out, and then he refused to come out, and he just makes up excuses as to why he can't come out. So actually, I spent the night in a hotel, having a couple of quiet drinks. But the lads went out to a nightclub, and by all accounts, had one of their very famous nightclub nights. And good luck to them. Great times.
Certainly, and we've covered all your seasons now, Dos. So, just summing it all up, those 11 years you had at the club, how proud are you just of what you built?
When I say what I built, I only built it with the backing of the best chairman ever in Bruce Elliott and the board. I only did it on the backing of getting Bairdy involved, and then subsequently, like I said, I've mentioned him a few times. The players that I had that put it in. I think the vision of the 3G pitch is probably one of my proudest moments. My proudest moments, and I mean this, are watching the girls' teams playing there, the women's team now, the disabled teams playing there. Listen, I put my heart and soul into that football club. I put so many hours of work into the club. I invested, as you know, probably over £1 million, maybe £1.5 million of money as well, which was the best money I ever spent because it was my hobby. And I'll look back at those 11 years of my life as it was probably the best 11 years that I could ever have had. Remain a Sutton United fan, as you know, for forever. Southampton fan, a Sutton United fan. But I'm now at Havant, and my job is just to be a football manager at Havant, and I thoroughly enjoyed that this year. Only being half an hour away in the car is is massive. I'm with again a very, very good chairman at Havant. Bairdy's with me, which again is very, very important. So myself and Ian are together with Simon Walton. The three of us are at Havant, and again we've had a brilliant season. You know, we were very close. It looked like we were going to catch Wealdstone. It looked like we were going on the old 2015 run again, where we were going to come up. We were unbeaten. We'd won 5 games on the trot. But as you know, one of the first results that Ian and I always looked out for was to see if Sutton had won. And every time they'd won, we were buzzing after the game. And the proud, there is, of course, there's pride. There's pride attached to that. There's supporters, the supporters, the close be taken away. It was a remarkable time. 11 years that, apart from the season where we could look at it, remarkable seasons out of 11 is almost unheard of. But did I think that when I turned up in 2008 that we'd beat Leeds United, that we'd play Arsenal, that we'd go on a 28-game unbeaten run, that we'd go to Scotland in the Scottish Challenge Cup and play Bohemians in Dublin? No, I didn't. Did I think we'd end up with average gates of 1,1700? We worked hard, really, that happened. And, I think hard work pays off. We should all feel so proud of this football club, of our football club. And as I said, it was a remarkable time that I'll never, ever forget.
So I just want to finish off with some fan questions, Dos. So firstly, what's the biggest signing you nearly made for Sutton United that didn't come off?
Biggest signing that I nearly made? Cool, that's a good question. Without being too big-headed here, I think I got the signings that I wanted to get. I think I got the Jamie Collins and the Craig Eastmans and the Rory Deacons and the Nicky Baileys, the Betsy Gomez's, the Max Biamus. I don't honestly remember a player that I wanted to get and we didn't end up getting. I think that there wasn't a star player out there that we tried to get that turned us down or that said they would come and then didn't end up coming. I think in the main, Bairdy and I were able to get into people, try and get the ethics and the ethos of the club across to them. And as I said, it was never ever about the money. Players could have earned a lot more money at other clubs than playing for me and Bairdy, that's for sure. But I think that I don't remember a massive player that got away from me, if I'm being honest. I think I got the players in the main that we went for.
So next question, a good question there from Josh Tong 26, by the way. So next question from MA Athlete from Twitter. Paul, of the players you work with at SUFC, who do you think could make a success in football management?
Cool, that's a good question. Football management is something where it's not necessarily about being a great coach. It's about being able to manage people and manage their situations and circumstances. It's a very, very complicated job. It's not an easy job for people just to step up and do. So you need experience as well, which I had of managing a business. I love football management. It was the same my football ethos that I had as within my business. So it's easier to coach than it is to be a manager. Everyone who knows me will tell you that I'm not a coach. I mess about mainly in training with the players. But you do need a good coach, and that's where I go right the way back to a Steve McKim being vital, Paul Taufer, giving a lot of credit to like Bairdy, coming in. So player management, looking at them, Jamie Collins could do it all day long. Whether he would get frustrated, with the attitude of some players and, some of the things that these players do these days, I don't know. Steve McKim was clearly one that I kept saying to Steve, you need to go out on your own 2 feet here, and I recommended him for the Tonbridge job. But I've got to be honest, not many, because it's a tough job, and it's one that you've got to be quite a maniac, to be honest, to become a football manager. The highs and the lows of the job are frightening. Your family have to back you 100% because of that situation. 90%, I said 90% of it's pain and only 10% of it's really good. And it's a drug. It's a drug that keeps us all going. But when you're losing or you're in that 90%, it's a horrible place to be. So Jamie, I think could do it. Not sure, to be honest, that I could name too many others. And I look at the players. It's 20 years now that I've managed, and there's not many players that I know of the ones that I've managed that have gone on to be. Jamie Stewart would certainly be someone. Jason Goodliffe, of course. Whilst they were only with me for a season, Jason Goodliffe all day long. Jamie Stewart. But yeah, not many have gone on to be football managers, to be fair.
Next question from @Mark Bravery. Who do you think was your best signing during your time at Sutton? Up to 3 answers allowed.
I'd have to give you 5. The best signing, I think you're all going to know. I'm going to say would be Collins. Jamie Collins was Ian, and it's Bailey's signing. Bailey's best signing was Jamie Collins. The weekend I spent in Jersey with Jamie Collins was the best weekend. The weekend I spent in Jersey, I got spent because that's a bit. Craig Eastman has to be up there. We shouldn't ever have been in a position to have signed someone of the quality of Craig Eastman. With Craig came in, and he's a magnificent player and person. And Craig's got to be up there. Rory Deacon, the Magic Man, because he put us on a journey in that FA Cup that will live long in the memory forever, to be honest. And Rory was the difference in many games in the league as well, between us winning and losing. I think I've got to put Nicky Bailey in that category as well. Again, Bailey, how we ever got hold of Nicky Bailey, and you've got to remember when we got Nicky, he wasn't playing a lot of football. He'd been injured a lot at Millwall, and Nicky went on to make hundreds of appearances for us, and one of the best football brains that I've ever seen at a player at this level. So certainly Nicky would have to fall into that top 4. And it's a shame really that I could only perhaps name 4 or 5, because there's other players like Max Biamu, we sold to Coventry, who I thought, again, massive credit to Bairdy, who got hold of Biamu, who was a typical French player, screamed every time the ball went near him, was a coward almost at some times, didn't know 1 minute to the next what you were going to get from him. And Bairdy got hold of Max Biamu and turned him into a proper player. So Biamu was a very, very good centre forward, and it was no surprise to me that he went on and did well at Coventry. And I've got to say Tommy Wright. I think that Tommy Wright, whilst he wasn't a signing as such, he was someone that we knew from junior football at Southampton. I think if Tommy hadn't got that serious injury, he would have gone on to be one of the best signings that the club had seen during my years at the time. Ross Warner, for me, the best goalkeeper by a country mile, along with the character of Ross. So we had some great players. Dan Wishart, who remembers that season with Dan Wishart rolling down, scoring, that goal at Margate that he scored. Some fantastic players. Probably, and the 5th one is going to be Simon Downer. Simon Downer for me was an outstanding signing at the time. Again, a player that was suffering from injury, and probably we shouldn't have signed him because he was too good for our level. But he was another real character, Simon. You had to know how to get the best out of him. The most laid-back centre-half in the world, the unfittest player in training. You didn't even know. After 60 minutes, I remember him constantly screaming at Jamie Collins he had to come off. And yet he played 95 minutes of every game. Downer, outstanding centre-half. Another one with an unbelievable football brain. And I think the players I'm giving you there all had superb football brains, alongside it. I've got to keep going. Beautyman, again, would be another first time he came to the club and signed. I thought he was a brilliant little young player. And what I'm so pleased for Harry, again, we can't go personal, but when I first signed him, he wasn't in a good place that first 6 to 9 months. We didn't know that at the time when we re-signed him. But boy, has he bounced back. And he's had a brilliant season this year for Sutton. I'm so pleased for Harry. Always got a smile on his face. Always cheeky. Thick as two short planks, Harry. But absolutely loved him. And I'm probably getting up to 7 or 8 now, but I could probably reel off more names. But some fantastic players across in that time, and good characters as well. Some real fun people. Leroy Griffiths as well. He would come in as well. Another player that really changed our season round and was very demanding of every other player and was ruthless in terms of wanting to win games. So there you go. There's probably 10.
I'm just going to wrap up with some live questions from the YouTube live chat. So Mark Morris asks, would you have traded the FA Cup run to have made it to Wembley in the playoff final?
No. Because that was a selfish thing. No, because I've never managed. I was never good enough to play at Wembley even as a schoolboy. So I could never replace that FA Cup. No, it made the club a huge amount of money. They proportion of the loan on the 3G pitch, which Bruce always wanted to do. So the FA Cup run for me will always be a highlight. Listen, personally, huge disappointment not to get to Wembley, but for the club, an absolute no-brainer. That and we also, I've got to say this, people won't like this, but the danger was if we'd beaten Tranmere on that day, I genuinely think the club would have been in a financial pickle going into the Football League, and we would never have been able to catch up with the volunteers, and it would have meant a lot of our volunteers leaving probably. To just be people behind the scenes because they wouldn't have been able to cope with a full-time Football League club. And that wouldn't have been a good thing, actually.
And a couple last questions from Mike Nicholson. Firstly, what one attribute must every player you sign have as a non-negotiable?
Non-negotiable is work rate, character. So for me, buying into the football club, buying into the ethos of what we're about. But Mike, I've got to say, a lot of work goes into signing players, knowing what their character was like, knowing, ringing up lots of their other people they played with, checking that they were the right players, ringing up Jamie Collins again, saying, look, this player, what do you think of him? Can you find out more info? Me and Birdie, we used to ruthlessly go through people to find out, if they were the right people for this club. And, within that, apart from that one season where, I got it wrong, the other 10 seasons, our recruitment in the main was first class. Of course, you're going to make some mistakes, but I'd say the main one was getting them to understand the work rate that was required and actually to the character of that person to fit within the group.
And last question from Mike Nicholson. How have you been keeping busy during lockdown?
It's been difficult, Mike, because, like all of us, my life is a very, very busy life with work and with football and with the children. And, it has been difficult, but just trying to keep a structure. So typically I've always gone to bed very, very, very late. I've always gone to bed 3 o'clock in the morning. Probably waking up a bit later than I normally would, 9, 10 o'clock. Taking a dog for a good hour walk every day. Homeschooling is a challenge, which Kate's thankfully doing. But just trying to stay busy and just trying to keep a structure, not turning on the TV till 6 o'clock at night, making sure that we just keep busy. And there's enough to do in this house, within the children and doing just normal things. Cooking dinner. I love cooking. I've always loved cooking. So, whilst Kate's been homeschooling, I've been doing lots and more cooking. But I'm not going to pretend it's not easy. I've watched every box. I've gone back to Manny Pacquiao. I watch a lot of boxing. I love boxing. And like I said, it's about time that I plucked up the courage to watch the Sutton United Arsenal game on YouTube. And that's something that can certainly take up 2 hours for me over the next few weeks. But just really going back, trying to watch as much sport as I can. Even going back now, watching games of this season, looking at players that might be available for next season. Still trying to stay like I said, I don't know. I don't know how this is going to end. I don't know how football is going to return. I think all of us want certainty. But for me, I think the biggest thing that I'd like to finish on is mentioning, Sir Tom Moore, who I believe now has got to £25 million. What an inspiration! I just love seeing what he's done and how he's done it and how this country's got behind him. Surely he's got to be knighted within a week or two. And hopefully it's a long look at itself, Tom. I think that, it can't be right that within 4 weeks, 5 weeks of a lockdown, that virtually every football club in League One and League Two is almost bankrupt. And I fear for football at this moment. I fear for, I've done a big article today in a non-league paper where I make my views known, and I'm fearful. I'm fearful for clubs. My club at the moment I haven't. I'm fearful for Sutton. I'm fearful for any club that hasn't got a lunatic wealthy backer, because it's going to be a massive problem with sponsors pulling out. There won't be any sponsorship in non-league or League One, League Two. They're trying to protect their own business. So I don't want to end on a real depressing note, but I think football's in for a massive reset, and I'm going to be quite interested over this next year or two to see how that reset's going to pan out. But one of them will be the wages that clubs can afford to pay, and maybe we go back to being proper part-time clubs again. I don't know, but what I do know is we will come out of it eventually. When that will be, I don't know. What I don't want to do is play any game without supporters there. I think it's a complete waste of time. I think without supporters, the game's nothing. Fancy walking out to no crowd there. Is there any point to that? So very unusual times. There's going to be some real tough times ahead. But what I do know at the football club, Sutton, and I haven't, there's some clever people up there. And if I've got confidence that anyone can survive what's coming, it will be with the board you've got at Sutton and the amazing chairman you've got there.
Sorry, just one last question, Doz. James King's thrown this one in. Favourite cricketer?
Favourite cricketer?
Yeah.
I would have to say it would be Jack Leach. And the reason for that is he scored the best run that I've ever seen in an innings. That Ben Stokes, Jack Leach afternoon I'm only joking, obviously, but that Jack Leach, Ben Stokes afternoon was, and I've rewatched that during the lockdown. I've rewatched the World Cup final win over New Zealand. The best cricketer in my day and age, it would have been Botham. I absolutely adored Ian Botham. I then loved Flintoff. So I'm looking at all rounders here, people that were bats and bowls, but Botham, Flintoff, and obviously now the amazing Ben Stokes. So I've always liked all rounders, and those would be my top three.
Well, that's it.
I love cricket. I love my cricket. Love cricket.
Fantastic stuff, Doz. Well, that's it, guys. Doz, it's been an absolute honour interviewing tonight. The fans have loved it. There's been some great comments, so thanks to the fans as well. But Doz, I really appreciate your time. It's certainly been a long interview, but it's certainly been worth it with the memories that you shared.
Yeah, and just listen, from me to everybody at the club, please stay healthy, stay indoors. But more importantly, I just want to send love to everybody. I love my time there. I loved everyone at that football club, and it will always remain right in that heart of mine. So don't get too emotional, Tom. Loved everything about it, and I just hope that it keeps going. It's Tom, and
brilliant. Doz, it's been an absolute pleasure once again having you on tonight. Really appreciate your time.
And you all have massive success.
Thank you very much for joining us, and have a good rest of the evening.
Cheers, Tom. See you later.
See you, Doz. Thank you very much. Bye. Bye. Well, there you go, guys. What a fantastic interview that was, and I really, really appreciate you all joining us this evening. And yeah, I hope you all have a good rest of the evening. I hope you all enjoyed the fantastic tales. It just shows how long Doz was there for. That it was over 2 hours to get through it all. But I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you all have a good Sunday evening. We've got more shows to offer you this week as well, so stay tuned for them. So yeah, I've been your host, Thomas Mitchell, and I really hope you've enjoyed tonight's stream with Paul Doswell. So thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.